Because, put simply, it's fucking stupid. If Kaiji has taught me anything, it's that there are two main elements to make a gambling series engaging: dramatic stakes and serious mind games. Kakegurui has neither of these things. The biggest flaw holding back any dramatic tension is the setting. They're in fucking high school. What are the kids going to do to each other? Steal their lunch money? The potential for any negative circumstances to really affect the participants of each game is immediately restricted, and if the show does go for some far-out consequences, stuff that would actually feel threatening, it would immediately strain the audience's sense of disbelief, because it's in high school. The costume design, I'd like to mention, is not necessarily bad, it's just odd. All the characters are wearing red and black blazers with checkered trousers and skirts, which are famously the outfits worn by casino staff. Doesn't really feel much like a school, to be honest. In the first episode, we are introduced to a simple game of restricted rock, paper, scissors. But with a twist. The cards are chosen by the audience of the game, so the distribution of each type is random. The mind games, according to Saotome, come from the inequality in distribution. This is bullshit. In a game like this that isn't rigged, the best thing you can come up with for each character acting skillfully is reading each other's faces. If they react with disgust, they probably have a hand of 3 rocks. However, this still doesn't work because it's all based on luck. You may think 3 rocks is bad, but your enemy might have 3 scissors. Allowing audience participation kills the idea that skill affects the player's chance of winning. The author, Kawamoto Homura, clearly understood this fact, and thus wrote the less interesting scenario of having the game be rigged. On a side note, if you're a published mangaka and haven't shown your face, fuck you. I realise that I'm probably insulting a ton of great mangaka, but still, fuck you. Not to say that rigging can't be done right, it most certainly can. It's just a matter of execution, really. In this sequence, we are treated to the ingenious deduction that if you get 2 rocks in your hand, chances are rock is the most common card in the box. This conclusion is retarded, because whatever cards you draw will not affect what cards remain. They are all predetermined. This is literally the gambler's fallacy, and would only make sense if the game was rigged. You could say that this is just his conclusion, as it is an inner monologue, and is therefore just the thoughts of our naive 14-year-old boy. However, the way it's presented doesn't give that impression. A far more reasonable conclusion could have been drawn from basic human psychology. Even if you haven't read up on it, most people would understand anecdotally that rock is the most played hand in the game. So it would be reasonable to assume most people would have drawn rocks on their card. Thus, if you don't have any rock, the opponent will potentially have 2 or 3. This isn't that clever, but it's better than presenting the gambler's fallacy. Heck, it's not even the gambler's fallacy, it's the inverse gambler's fallacy. Anyway, after a bunch of bets that the new girl loses, they quickly attempt to ramp up the stakes by having the new girl bet 10 million yen in real cash. This method of ramping up the stakes is fine, but in this setting it doesn't work. They are students. Losing this money doesn't mean anything to them because it's not their money, it's their parents' cash. In Kaiji, when the bets increase, it actually has tangible effects on the character, because he's a fucking adult who lives on his own at a dead-end job and needs to survive. Whereas if these children lose the money, they still have a house to go back to. Honestly, who gives one? Jabami, or Jabami, either one, unsurprisingly wins the bet. As it turns out, the game was rigged, as people in the room were constantly turning their eyes to the retard from earlier, who was signalling to Saotome from behind her, and she was able to read what he was signalling through her hand mirror. This solution would have been awesome if it didn't come out of nowhere. If the visuals during the match were to convey that signalling was at all going on to allow us to piece it together ourselves, then it would have been cool. However, nothing of the sort is actually presented, so it feels unearned. They could have used footage of students shifting their gaze from the flashback in the match, and then it could have seemed reasonable. And it would have saved Mappa money. Even tonally, this episode is off. The music used throughout feels as if it's evoking a sense of horror rather than blood-pumping tension, which is odd because it goes against the tone of the series. We then close the episode being told that this girl loses herself in gambling. Fair enough. Episode 2 opens with an exposition scene in the school cafeteria. Retard-kun is dealing Kabame more details about the saying. Apparently, the 3,000 students at this school, Jesus Christ, are ranked according to their skill in gambling, which the student council monitors. Just like regular Japanese high school, the results of each student are published and are on display on a billboard. On a stairwell, in this case, for some reason. We are then told the bottom 100 students are subjected to ridicule and are known as house pets. The odd thing is this bullying they are subjected to is school-sanctioned. What the fuck is this setting? What is this school doing to prepare these students for life? Gambling requires a very specific set of skills, you know, which not everyone has. What parent would allow their child to go to a school where they are encouraged to be house pets? It's fucking stupid. The student council requires pupils that fail to wear collars. Look, it's all too obvious that this is author appeal and that it's not supposed to make sense. Kawamoto clearly has a domination fetish and is just appealing to teenage boys that feel the same way, and that's fine. It's just not for me. Anyway, the episode continues with a new opponent being introduced, and we are told this character has never lost a gamble. Ooh, stakes. The second game is Double Concentration. In this game, two opponents battle it out to match cards not only by their value, but by suit as well. This means that 104 cards are required to play. We are then shown 3 minutes of them matching cards, intercut with Retardkin's boring commentary that any audience member could figure out. Jabami loses, and wants to play again. Unfortunately, she doesn't have 20 million yen to wager, which is what is expected. You see, the first game was essentially a practice, meaning the new girl strikes up a deal. If I lose, you get 20 million yen, and if you lose, I get all the nails on your fingers and toes. Turns out this girl's quirk is that she collects people's nails and paints them. She shows off a briefcase full of them, for fuck's sake. As I said before, any attempt that the series makes to pose a potentially threatening outcome other than ramping up the wage will come across as forced and far-fetched. In what school would the council and staff allow its students to be physically tortured for the sake of a bet? Retarded. No mind games are used throughout either round, however, the girl has a trick up her sleeve. She plays with her own manufactured decks different to those she advertises, as one half of these cards have a marking on them when it's above a certain temperature, and fade away as they cool down, so any suspicion of cheating will fade when the cards return to normal. This setup is actually quite genius. However, Jabami defeats her in the cheapest way possible. She had noticed the marking during the first round, and in that time had memorised all of the placements of each card, so during the second round made no mistakes. The idea that she can pull off superhuman feats like this destroys any chances of the show being taken seriously from now on. At least in the first episode, the solution came about through real-world application. There was no psychological analysis at all here. She didn't even make a mistake. We have no reason to suspect she has any chance of losing. Noticing that tiny mark was bad enough. Even the other girl spent time memorising all the cards' markings to give her an advantage before the game took place. Even this solution, which is far-fetched as fuck, could have been presented in a more interesting way. Maybe we could have seen some shots from Jabami's perspective as she noticed a little marking fading away on half the cards. POV would have worked perfectly. Then we could have pieced together that the game was rigged without being explicitly told, and Jabami could have picked two of the cards that had the marking and discovered that they were of the same suit or something. I don't know. Anything would have been more interesting. At this point, I realised that this show was going to be about Jabami meeting a new opponent in each episode and playing some game they made up that will essentially seem perfectly fair, but actually be rigged, potentially having Jabami lose the first round with little stake and then immediately ramp up the stakes when she discovers the trick, and the audience will have no idea what it is until the explanation afterwards. This is shit. If you enjoy the character designs and the faces the girls pull, that's fair, but they don't appeal to me. The OP is nice, the foley is decent, and I like that scene where Jabami gets wet from learning how strange the academy is. Thanks for listening, and catch you later.